We believe our next briefing, and the topic is can civic society force the government to live in a new way or to replace it? We'll speak to Kharkiv activists and also to Yegor Sobolev, who is the head of Purging Committee with Dmytro Kutovyi, initiator of the public platform Kharkiv Civic Forum, and Oleksandr Chumak, head of the Association of Private Employers. Good afternoon, Dmytro Kutovyi. I am one of the coordinators of Kharkiv Civic Platform, Kharkiv Civic Forum, and we have about 35 of such civic groups in Kharkiv region. One of the main projects that is Kharkiv Purging Chamber, which was set up on the 18th of July. We prepare a general meeting, and we'll develop the most important document for any public servant in Kharkiv region, which we promise, and that is called a Purging form. The goal is to support necessary the legislation on purging, because if we don't purge the authorities, any reform is impossible in the country, and we have lots of proof of that. The more active any government stands against to civic society, and the more serious we will develop. And we took lessons of 10 years old, and we saw enough of promises, and we understand that this country is impossible to replace from top and only from the bottom, and only civic society can do that in a way for those changes to be irreversible, and that's our main goal. Kharkiv Purging Chamber develops the procedure, and according to which we'll suggest that all public servants and to directors of rectors of universities, and on the first stage they will voluntarily fill the illustration form, and with a lot of information. Then civic society through any legal means will check that information, and then we will suggest to hold a meeting, open meeting, and then as a result we'll make a conclusion whether that person is can hold a position, or this or the next one. So we'll take the authorities will have to take into account the opinion of Kharkiv Purging Chamber, and as a result of that procedure, we'll take decisions whether on access of our citizens to the competitions for vacancies. The first experience of such procedure, first time in Ukraine, and Oleksandr Chumak will tell you about that. And we had it in Kharkiv, and because they ignored our activities, and they can ignore for some time. That's why we're here. On the 15th of May, Business Society of Kharkiv initiated a nomination of a candidate for Chief of Tax Inspection in Kharkiv region from a business society. On the 15th of May, we don't have a chief of that service since April 15. We developed together with the Kharkiv Forum. We suggested to nominate our candidate and to have a public discussion, interview. The principles of patriotism, professionalism, and ethic, morality. But there were 4 candidates for that position, and a jury of 12 representatives of business associations and NGOs that represent 5,000 active entrepreneurs in Kharkiv region, and who stand for interests more than 200,000 subjects of economy in Kharkiv region. As a result of that public interview, we agreed on one candidate, Mikhail Gagarkin, and we suggested to the main department of Ministry of Revenues to nominate him as a chief of the main department of that ministry in Kharkiv region. The letter about this initiative was sent on the 15th of May to Yegor Belarus, and we told them about our initiative. After we nominated that initiative on the 23rd of May, we sent a letter about that candidate, and we suggested to nominate him, to appoint them As the head of office to Yegor, we informed Yegor, the Prime Minister, the Governor of Kharkiv City, on the 10th of June, after inauguration of the President. We also sent a letter to Poroshenko. At present, we understood that they ignored our initiatives because on the 31st of July, the order of the Chief of the Main Fiscal Service, they appointed the acting Chief of the Revenue Ministry in Kharkiv region. We don't have anything against that candidate, but the main point that our initiative was completely ignored, though in June we received an answer that our candidate will be brought to the HR department and in the Ministry of Revenue. That did not happen. We collect all the documents to nominate our candidate once again, and then we sent all these documents to the newly created commission on HR in the main revenue, in the state revenue, in the state fiscal service, for our candidate to be considered officially. Because our initiatives were ignored, and despite the fact that for many times they spoke about vacancies, lots of vacancies, and we decided to inform the society about our initiative, and we wanted to inform our partners in neighboring districts. And today we received documents for vacancies of the chiefs of all the main departments in the regions, and that is in the state fiscal service, and all business associations. They can fill those documents, but this initiative was not. There was not enough of information in mass media, so they have started that procedure today, and they give only 10 days for that. So we are ready to share our experience on how to elect a candidate from business society, and also we call to take under control all appointments in this field, and will control it from business society and also and we ask Yegor Sobolev for that initiative to be supported. Thank you. I wanted to add, as civic purging committee, from the very beginning we believe that all appointments to positions leading managers should be through open competitions. And if you remember, in March, together with the Ministry of Interior, we wanted to find chiefs of regional police officers, and the first competitions were wonderful in the Volyn region and Lviv region. They found very good quality policemen who became chiefs, and they are friends with local communities until now. But the problem is that together with the local community, they cannot get rid of the deputies, because the Ministry of Interior, after 2 successful competitions, stopped that and stopped purging the police. In any case, that experience showed that it's possible, even under our conditions, or I would say especially under our conditions, when we have to clean our authorities, and involvement of civil society is important. The only recommendation to all NGOs, groups of citizens who participate in competitions in nomination of candidates, is better to nominate not 1 but 3 candidates, for example, for nobody to suspect that is you lobby someone, and very often they use that an excuse. The second point about this initiative, it's very important that we don't stop. If it doesn't work, if public servants don't listen to you, then we have to think how to dismiss them, because through the country we have the old system of Yanukovych. He fled, but his judges, his prosecutors, his SBU, his officers in the general staff, they still hold their positions. It's very important that we declare jihad against them. And if you live in a district where there is a briber, and then run ATO against that person who takes bribes. In every city, in every region, in every district, you should initiate a resignation of odious figures. But you have to give reasons why they should leave the position. And you should demand to find new people through the procedure of competitions. For such initiatives of people to have more chance to happen, we ask again to come to the parliament tomorrow by 12 o'clock. We invite all for the meeting to support the law on purging the authorities, because it includes checking all the public servants with the help of media, and selection through competitions, and the reduction of their number, but higher salary, and because of the reduced number. For us to bring to the state public service normal people, and for them to work normally. Under this law, there are signatures of all the leaders of the majority of the parliament. But it's important that they not only sign but also push buttons together with all members of the factions. We demand that to happen next week, and we ask all people who are not on the front, who are not in hospital, to come to the parliament tomorrow by 12 o'clock, and to show that all Ukraine demands purging of the authorities. Thank you. Now we can start answers questions.
Немає поки що запитань.
No questions, then I will start as a moderator. This law on purging the authorities, is it on the agenda of the parliament? When shall we expect the vote? And it is registered in the parliament, and as I said, it has been signed by representatives of all the forces of current majority, including the leader of Batkivshina, of Svoboda, and Vitaly Klitschko at the press conference 3 days ago came to support this initiative in your auditorium. We asked them to vote for this law next week, but how this will happen will be defined by MPs on Monday, headed by Oleksandr Turchinov. If they see that on Saturday there were a lot of people who came to demand the law, then I'm sure it will be put on the agenda and will be voted for next week. Could you please name 3 key points of this law just after it is adopted? What will it bring on? Honestly, as soon as it will be adopted, it won't give us anything. The experience of adoption of the first lustration law saw that without the will of community, of the public and officials to perform this law, the implementation of the law is impossible. Until now, the inspection and checkups on the judges who were imprisoning people on Maidan have not started, although this is directly provided for by the law. And even now, they haven't formed the new Supreme Council of Justice and new Qualification Commission, which is the key body to change the judges because of subversive actions. I'll tell you more. Although the checkup on first judges who were imprisoning Maidan people, who were banning peaceful gatherings, who sanctioned listening into phone conversations, this checkup started, but very strange stories started to happen as well. For instance, in the Kyiv Court of Appeal, they said that 20 cases were burned As far as I understand, there's a heat on the street, and that's why the cases, the files are burning. Of course, we won't sit on our hands with this, and the checkup will happen, but the society needs to join in. Friends, it is very important to adopt the law, but without our active participation and without the will of top officials, the law itself will not work. Its major ideas are like this: the checkup on all the law enforcement bodies, workers, judges, and top officials, expulsion of the people who were members of the district Communist Party committee, CPSU committees, everybody who was working for the KGB and who was studying at KGB schools, everyone who was sitting on the positions of authority during Maidan and who have not filed for resignation. Also, everybody who supported separatism and annexation. And the key point is also check up on their property. If they are not able to explain where from they got this property, then they should be expelled from their positions. Like this happened in Czech Republic, Eastern Germany, Georgia. They have undertaken such surgical steps, and the experience of development of these countries in the last 2 decades shows that they've been right and we not when we avoided lustration in the 90s. Several questions from the audience, as I see. My question is to Kharkivites. If the person who is now acting head of the fiscal service of Kharkiv region will agree to go through lustration, will you lustrate him, and will another candidate take part? Well, we don't have any claims against people who are being appointed to different offices now. We understand that public lustration is just a public initiative which is not compulsory for the authority, but when there is a certain public support, you cannot but pay attention to some procedures. For instance, the lustration which worked once in all the countries that Yegor mentioned still works now. Let's be frank, there's quite a number of people in the current authorities who have never worked with the KGB, but this does not mean that they shouldn't be under control today or tomorrow. So we think that the ministry now has to declare a second competition, the more so that in the beginning of August, Mrs. Elena Makeyeva is now head of the Public Council on Personnel of the State Fiscal Service. She is well known in business circles. She is very well experienced. She understands the processes that's been taking place between business and fiscal bodies, and we do count on her and her public counsel and on her experience, so that Belarus will have to hold a repetition contest and to look into candidates who were put forward by the public. By the way, there were 2 candidates put forward by the public. So we are adherents of a civilized procedure. We understand that lustration today in many regions is happening by burning the tires near administrative buildings, and it has a revolutionary nature in a great part. And then all this lustration can be questioned because, of course, someone will say they are just clarifying their personal relations. We're very serious methodologically as far as the procedure is concerned, and we're convinced that after the law on lustration will be passed, and I believe that it will be passed by the current parliament, after the authorities will be initially purged from overt scoundrels, the public will learn how to, without revolution and without tires, control those people who come to different positions. I'm sure that our candidates will take part in the open contest. I'm sure that the person who is now acting head won't be able to not allow the public to take part in the preventive secondary lustration. We believe that he will agree. In Kharkiv, you cannot avoid public initiative now. We will stand till the end. Also, Kharkiv, I have two questions. But what if the authorities act cynically and ignore your initiative? What do you do next? Is it again revolutionary like we saw in Kiev yesterday? What are you going to do if the things evolve in the way like Yegor puts it? The law is adopted, but it doesn't work. My second question is to Oleksandr. What are the next positions after the chief of the department of the Ministry for Fiscal Service? Whom do you want to illustrate? I'll finish with the first question. We understand that the authorities will do everything in order to continue to ignore any public initiatives. This is the tradition, this is the practice, and this is the theory of the Ukrainian authorities, notwithstanding what political forces hold power. So we're prepared for different options in Kharkiv as in any other city. For instance, in Kharkiv, in a revolutionary way, part of a prosecutor's office and the courts has been lustrated. I don't know how civilized this was, but some open scoundrels had to leave. So radical organizations, groups, and public movements that will necessarily help the public lustration chamber to reach its goals in a civilized way, not by seizing buildings, but by showing their civic feelings, even if it is ignored after active actions in the streets. You know, the dog is barking, but the caravan is going, so we will just offer everybody to fill in the illustration statement. Those who refuse them, we offer a hot season even in winter, because then the illustration will start to acquire individual features, because everybody has to answer for their actions individually. I'll finish Dmytro's answer. Let's not forget that combat action is in full swing now, and sooner or later people will come back from the front line and they will ask those who hold power now what has been done while they were dying and their comrades were giving up their lives, and those people will not will have no other way out as apart from asking in a manly way. As far as further appointments are concerned, we say that public lustration should be undergone by, first of all, heads of district fiscal services. So we have to create a special commission at the chief department in Kharkiv region, and people from the public lustration chamber from Kharkiv and the business community should join this commission so that appointments are transparent. I also represent interests of small and medium-sized business. We're interested in all the offices connected to the small and medium-sized business. The bodies that we face from time to time, those are, first of all, controlling bodies, then all the bodies connected to the support and development of entrepreneurship in the region and in Ukraine, because we didn't have never had a state-run policy of support and development of business. We are now ready to take part in this. I already mentioned controlling bodies, and the business, of course, will be interested in appointments in the Ministry of Interior and in the Prosecutor's Office, and probably in the State Security Service. Then other offices that should be replaced. We have analyzed vacancies in the Kharkiv State Regional Administration and in the city of Kharkiv, in the Executive Committee of the Kharkiv City Council, something like 150 offices that can be filled by candidates from the public. So the process of lustration acquires a second part, which is the formation of the public personnel reserve from activists and volunteers who are ready to join state service, public service, and are ready to work for the benefit of the state in order to realize the reforms. So apart from specific lustration, in parallel we will form the public personnel reserve, which will be open, which will be accessible for contests, and the contest competition to join the reserve will be transparent and understandable. And we have also to pay attention to one other thing, because the purge law is just the first stage, and the legislation on state service and public service needs reform, because current legislation is formulated like that normal people cannot really do anything, in public service. So the next step probably that we should fight for is the legislation for about public service. Any other questions? No questions. Thank you, Yegor Sobolev. Thank you, our Kharkiv colleagues. And I remind you that there was a request for everybody to come tomorrow to this Parliament and to voice your support for the law on the purge in the power, in the authorities.